Okay, Kierkegaard. So let's begin. Let me review a little bit, just clarify a few things. So yes, so this is really, some of you usually, as not in this class, but often I get this question about Kierkegaard, and that is why does he think that only Christian love, right, is true love, right? What if I'm not a Christian, right? What if I'm not, what if I don't even believe in God? Can I have access, right, to this love? So of course, Kierkegaard is describing love as it is described. I mean, he's exploring love as it is described in this Christian text, right? But of course, this is a type of love we all have access to, right? He doesn't believe you have to be a Christian. You don't even have to believe in God to access this type of love, but it is a way of loving which he discovered, right? He stumbled upon this way of loving in the Gospels, right? But of course, this is something that all of us can do, right? Or practice or learn. So again, right, even though he's calling it Christian love, it doesn't mean you have to be a Christian to practice it or to experience it, right? It's just he's comparing two kinds of love: the poet's love, right, which is popular love, the way that the world loves, right, which is what we've been studying with Buber, Kant, right, the I-it, the I, right? He's looking in a different approach to love than what we usually see, which he calls the poet's love, right? He's talking about a different type, another level, which he entitles Christian love, right? But again, you don't have to be a Christian to experience it. So I wanted to clarify this. So so he begins. I'm going to begin here on the very first page where he's quoting actually the words of Jesus, a parable of Jesus, right? And the parable is on page 23. It's very short, right? Jesus was known for some of his enigmatic teachings, right? He would tell a story, and then people had to kind of excavate the story to find the meaning. He liked to speak like that to get you to think, to get you to ponder. So he begins, so this is Jesus speaking in the Gospel of Luke. For each tree is known by its own fruit, for figs are not gathered from thorns, nor are apples picked from a bramble bush, right? And then Kierkegaard is going to stop on this vision, and he's going to write a whole chapter expounding on these words, trying to search for the hidden treasure here in the teaching of Jesus, right? And so he's going to focus on the notion of love as a tree. And so let's stop on this metaphor, and let's begin by exploring this. So I'm going to look at two things in the first hour. I'm actually in the first hour. I'm going to look at what we call the fruit of love, and then we're going to look at the roots of love, right? So there's two things with a tree. There's a trunk, and then there's the fruit branching out, but then also branching out under the ground are the roots of love. So we have to look at these two systems to really understand what Kierkegaard is saying. So I'll start now with the fruit of love. So I'll summarize, and then we'll look at some quotes, okay? So first of all, what we're learning here with the notion that love ought to bear fruit, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying that the tree is known by its fruits. Love ought to bear fruit. So I'm going to stop on that a little bit, expound, and then we can go in some quotes, right? Basically, what Kierkegaard is saying is that true love, mature love, adult love is known by its attitude in love, right? Which is not about taking love, but about giving, right? As soon as you begin to switch from taking, from needing, from seeking, from having to have love to I have too much love and now I want to pour it out, I want to give it, you are moving now into this level of maturity. But the problem with most of us, why we never get there, is that we have not been loved enough in our childhoods, in our youth, right? We have not had proper love environment. And so we spend our adulthood looking for that, looking for the parental love, right? And so we are always taking, we're always needing, we always have to have it, right? We can't have 1 minute alone, right? Single. So we never get to that other level. And so what Kierkegaard is saying, we have to get to a point where we are fine, right, by ourselves, where we are able to create, and we'll talk about how, by the way, well, were we able to have enough love in ourselves that we are now giving the love rather than taking the love. So we have to, in a way, find, and he doesn't expound too much on that, but definitely before you can give love, you have to have received love somehow, right? And so he says, right, we need to get beyond this. We need to get beyond the child seeking love to the adult giving love, right? And again, I've said this before, right? You know you're ready for marriage, right? Or for a committed relationship when you're not looking around thinking, oh, what can this person give me? Or they're not giving me enough, or they don't have this, they don't have that, or they're missing this, they're missing that. As long as you're thinking like this, you're in the taking mode, right? As long as you're thinking, oh, they don't, I don't feel fulfilled, they're not giving me this, they're missing that, something is missing, blah, blah, blah. You are in the taking mode. You begin to shift. When you begin to shift to what can I offer this person? Yes, they are imperfect, but what can I bring to the relationship? How can we build this love together? How can we craft this love together? You are now ready as soon as you make the shift from taking to giving, right? So that's basically what he's saying. So let's look at a few quotes. I'm on page 29. Okay, page 29. And here, before I read, I just want to say a few more things, right? We're going to see here that very often, oh, before I go further, Rudolph, you have a question? Go ahead.
To throw off your thought, I just wanted to add there, so when we get to the point where we know that we are now ready to give love, and when we're leaving that mental childhood and become an adult, how does one receive that knowledge? What needs to be in a person to be able to give that love? Isn't that the vicious circle of what you had said earlier? The child becoming an adult, but all of humanity really coming from broken families with baggage. All of our faith has been determined when we're a day old. And now some of us experience more love as a child as others, or experience different types of love. And now we're adults. So there's 20, 25, 30 years, 40 years in between when we learn what love is and when we're now supposed to give love. So how does that happen?
It's a really good question. What we're going to learn today, which is actually found in a lot of the teachings of Jesus, is that by offering love, you in a way become more filled with love, right? And this is kind of sounds a little counterintuitive, because usually we have the notion, I'll take this example, if I have a bottle and I start pouring out, what's going to happen to my bottle? It's going to become empty. This is the laws of the physical universe. In the metaphysical universe, the more you pour, the more filled you are, right? It's a very different dimension, right? And so what we're going to learn today is that one of the ways that we can begin to feel full, right, is by actually giving what we don't even have, the little that we have, right? We give, and as we are giving, we shall become filled. There's a beautiful story in the Gospels that illustrates this beautifully, and you guys can read it. It's in the Gospel of John. I think it's the 4th chapter. It's a Samaritan woman, the woman at the well. And this, so I'll just tell you briefly the story, right? This is a woman. So Jesus meets this random woman at a well, right? And this woman happens to be one of the most broken-hearted people on earth, right? She has gone through 5 broken marriages, right? All has failed. And she's done. She's basically done with love, right? And she arrives at this scene, and Jesus is by himself. And it's so interesting. I analyze this. The first thing he says to her is, "Give me a drink." And it's, I've wondered why, right? Why does he start with that? And I start to realize, and in the light of what Kierkegaard is going to say today, he's basically telling her, give what you have. You who is done with giving, you who has been cheated out of love all your life, who has nothing left to give, right? Give what you have. And he says, give me a drink, because I am about to give you, right, this infinite love that will overflow, that will be infinite, right? So basically, one of the lessons I get from that story, and you guys can read it later tonight, right? Gospel of John, chapter 4, is to very often you don't have anything, you don't have resources, but just choosing to give what you have is going to bring plenitude, right? Is going to fill you in a way that no taking will ever do. Does that answer your question, Rudolph? Okay.
Sure does. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. All right, so we're anticipating already, right, on what Kierkegaard is going to say. So that's good. Okay, so going further. Okay, so now he's going to talk about the fruit, and he's going to talk about how certain people, it seems that they love us, right? But there's zero fruit, right? They're all talk, no action, right? And we're very tempted when we're dealing with these people to dump them, be like, you're just talking. I don't see it. I don't see the love, right? And he's going to talk in a very compassionate way about these people. So let's read there, page 29. Do you see the little footnote 7 right about in the middle? Let me check the gallery. Whoever sees the footnote 7, wave at me. This is page 29 in the middle, tiny footnote 7. Okay. I need 2 people. I have Fatakov always ahead of everyone. Okay, thank you, Debbie. All right, great. Debbie is still in the shower. Very good. Okay, great. So let me read right there, right before. Now let me just continue right there. You should not be ashamed of your feelings, he says. Okay, so this is very different from Kant, right? I hope you notice right away, right? Kant was like, feelings don't matter, feelings lie. Who cares about feelings? What matters is duty, right? He said, no. You should not be ashamed of your feelings, and still less of honestly giving to each one his due. So he's saying, don't be afraid to give love, right? Don't be afraid to open your heart and offer yourself. Nevertheless, he says, one should not love in word and with devices of speech, right? And neither should one come to regard them as sure marks of love. So yeah, you have feelings of love and you tell the person you love them, but that's not it yet. That's not love yet, he says, right? He continues. He says, on the contrary, by such fruits, and then he corrects himself, or by these being merely leaves, not fruits yet, one should know that love has not had time for growth. Okay, so very often, right, when the person we love, who is not great at showing their love in action, right, but are always saying they love us, right, Kierkegaard is saying, have some compassion, because it doesn't mean they don't love you. Their love is sincere. It's just that their love has not yet matured to the level of the fruit. So he's asking us in a way to have compassion on ourselves. We're all going to fall in love and be really genuine about it, right? But there's a distance to travel between falling in love and feeling genuinely in love to actually that love growing into fruit, right? Which is why it's only after 10 years of marriage the couple's finally happy because they had the leaves, but the fruit takes a while. This is why marriage, I mean, some people, they're saints, so it clicks right away. But most of us, right, it's gonna take years of working together and working on ourselves to get to that point where love bears fruit. And this is the moment where the relationship becomes sweet, right? It's not in the beginning. In the beginning, yes, you have this little sweetness in the beginning, very quickly goes away. And then you're dealing with the thorns and the leaves and the trunk, no fruit, right? So this is why, right, love takes time to taste, to become sweetened, right? Because we are each of us trying to get to the level of the fruit. There is a distance, there is a lapse between your feelings and the actual mature offering of love, the bearing of fruit, right? So that's what he's saying. So let's not, stop believing that the other loves us, right? Let's continue to believe that their love is authentic. It's just that they need more time to bear fruit. And sometimes we're the ones, right, who need to be waited on because we need more time to bear fruit, right? Okay, so he continues, and I love this quote here about, this is the last paragraph on page 29. It is said of certain plants that they must form hearts. I want to talk about this forming of the heart. The same must be said of a man's love. If it is really to bear fruit and consequently be recognizable by its fruit, it must form a heart. So in other words, not enough to have feelings, right? That's just the beginning. The feelings then must begin their shaping of your heart, right? And there's a huge, I mean, I really love the first few months of being in love, right? Because there's such an amazing potential for us to become better versions of ourselves. I don't know if you're like me, but when you're in love, you're nice to everyone. I mean, the stupid family member, the person who rushes you on the street, you're just nice. You just, you become a nice person within this time, right? So you can see the potential, right, of love to transmute us into the better versions of ourselves. So that's what he's saying. We ought to use these feelings to make us into better versions of ourselves. The feelings our hearts must be formed. It's not enough to have a heart full of love. The heart must be molded, shaped, formed sometimes crushed and rebuilt, right? For you to be able to bear fruit, right? For that heart to be able to love in a way that is mature. Okay, so we have so we got that. Basically, to conclude, to bring it all together on that section, right? Basically, what Kierkegaard is saying is that we ought to learn to love unconditionally or unselfishly, right? And this entails that we go beyond what Rumi was talking about the kids playing, you know, exchanging little pieces of pottery, right? He's saying we need to love in a higher level than that. We need to reach a higher level than that. In other words, we need to love even when we are not loved in return, even when we have broken up, right? The love must continue to be cultivated. One of the sure signs, says Kierkegaard, that we never loved is when we stop loving because there is some issue, right? That's the sure sign you were never truly genuinely in love with that person. When you break up, now you start to destroy them in your mind and with your words and with your friends. This is a sure sign you were never truly loved that person. Or when they're starting to, their behavior is shifting, they're going through something and they're not really giving you the love you need, and now you changing. Right? Your love is becoming cold, right? All of this is a sure sign that their love was never really there, was not yet mature or strong enough, right? To take the shift, right? So the invitation really is here to keep loving, right? Even keep one's heart open, even when the other sometimes distances themselves, even when they sometimes leave, or sometimes they become closed off, to keep bearing fruit, because that is who we are, right? We are a tree that bears fruit. It is in a way, for Kierkegaard, you bear fruit because that's in your nature to bear fruit. You don't bear fruit for the other. You bear fruit because that's who you are, because that's the highest version of yourself, right? So to see love kind of like a blossoming of yourself, rather than how shall I put it? Rather than a currency by which you receive something back, right? So let me say that again. That's important, right? What Kierkegaard is saying is love is your own blossoming. When you love, whether you are loved back in return doesn't matter, because when you love, you are really blossoming forth as the highest version of yourself. You are, like Rumi said, the bird in the sky. You're the fish in the water. You're fully yourself. Whether they respond or not is of no consequence, because you're blossoming over here, right? So love as a blossoming rather than love as a currency, right? Everybody with me? Let me check. Occasionally I check that you're there. Okay, wave at me if you're with me. Yes, okay, good. Otherwise I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Good. All right, so okay, so now this is all beautiful and very nice, but what happens, right? So one might even be willing to love no matter what. I'm going to blossom over here. My lover is going crazy, but I'm going to continue, right, to love, whether they love me or not. And so, but the problem is with this is that very often we become depleted, right? So we are full of goodwill. We want to love no matter what, right? But the problem is I'm pouring, and you are just not giving me, I'm not receiving anything. There's no flow, no interchange. And so slowly, I become angry, resentful, depleted, right? And so what happens then, right? What can we do then when we start to become depleted? What does Kierkegaard propose? Is this realistic, right? In other words, is it realistic to say love no matter what, love unconditionally, love through the crisis, love through the breakup, right? Where do we get the strength for this, right? That's the question. Where do we get the strength to love in these moments when we are not loved in return? It doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem humanly possible. And this is where Kierkegaard says we need to now explore the root system of the tree. Okay, so let me say that again, right? We need to explore it. So now we get to the second section, which is the root system. No tree can bear fruit unless it has a strong root system, right? The tree is not getting its energy from the other trees around it, right? It's not, doesn't need the energy from the people picking the fruit. The tree doesn't need you to give it something in return for the fruit, or it will die, right? The tree is fine giving fruit, but for this, he needs a strong root system. And so what Kierkegaard is saying is that likewise, we don't need other people to give us fruits to stay alive. What we need is a strong root system. so that no matter how the outside environment is, we stay strong, right? There's trees that grow in the desert. I don't know if you're familiar with, this is very interesting. We learned this in ethics and development. So there's regions in I think it's Eastern Africa, where people wanted to develop a region, and they decided, oh, let's it's not very good for grazing and so forth, but let's cut down the trees. Right, let's cut down the trees and do something with furniture or whatever, and get the people going so they can, it was a project, it was a development project for the people of that region. So they start cutting down all the trees, including a tree that was considered sacred. So the elders were not too happy about that, but they started to cut down the sycamore tree. Right? It's considered to be a sacred tree. You're not supposed to touch it, but they're like, we're Westerners, we're modern. What are these stupid tales about the sycamore tree? We're cutting everything down. And what happened when they cut down the sycamore trees, the worst drought happened. And they couldn't see for a while, they didn't see the connection, right? Drought is something external, right? What does it have to do with the tree? Well, actually what they realized is that the sycamore tree is a tree that's roots are very, very deep. And because of that, it holds on to the water. And so when it rains, right, instead of the water washing away, it goes to that deep root system. And so in a way, the tree is protecting the moisture of the land, right, because of its root system. And so when you cut that one down, you have nothing to hold the water anymore. It all just goes, back in the ocean. And so the land dries up, right? So it's just an illustration that there are some trees like the sycamore tree, which can survive in the desert, because their root system is so deep. They don't need the weather around them to be good. They don't need it to rain. They don't need the dew. They just have that root system where they can reach down into the deepest pools of water, down very deep, right? And so what Kierkegaard is saying, you don't need the other to love you to survive. You don't need to be surrounded by love to survive. If you have such a strong root system, right, where you can go deep, then you can basically survive through that connection to those depths, to these watery depths, right? Okay, so that's nice. So now you're thinking, okay, great. And what is that? What is this depth that I could connect to, right? So let's go and see what Kierkegaard says about that. I'm on page 26. Okay. Go to the second section, Love's Hidden Life. And we're just going to read the top, which is from whence. When you're there, tell me where you are. So page 26, second section, from whence comes love. Okay, great. Okay, so he says this, from where does love come from, right? Does it come from the people around us? Does it come from our parents? Does it come from our lovers, right? Where does love come from? Where does it have its origin and its source? This is the key. I mean, if we can find this, we don't need, we're done. We've accomplished our purpose, right? So he continues, where is the place, its stronghold from which it proceeds? Certainly, he says this place is hidden. And I believe him, because if it was out there open, we would not be thirsting like this for love. We would not be crazy for love like we are. We would have found this secret place, right? So he says, certainly this place is hidden, or is in that which is hidden. And now he begins to give us a clue where to find this source, this deep source, this dimension of depth that can nourish us, right? He says, there's a place in a human being's most inward depths, right? The love in it, and this is crazy. I hope you're following how insane this is. And he certainly needs to demonstrate this, right? I want to know, but he's basically saying within each one of us, there is a profound source of love, or there is an opening or an access onto the universal source of love that we can tap into in order to feel nourished, strengthened, rejuvenated. No matter how the climate is outside of us, if we are tapping into this source, we will be fine, right? So he continues, right? From this place proceeds the life of love, for from the heart proceeds life. But this place you cannot see, and so forth. And so he continues, right? Let's go to page 27, second paragraph. The hidden life of love, still talking about this source, is in the most inward depths, unfathomable, and still has an unfathomable relationship with the whole of existence. So now he's saying, he's going deeper. He's saying this source is in fact, it's more than us. It's a cosmic source that we have access to from within, right? The access is not out there. The access is from within. We can access this cosmic source of love, basically, he's saying, right? Continuing, which no eye sees, right? And then he says this, now he's going to use Christian terminology, but I'm going to translate it into secular terminology in a second, right? So he says this, so human beings' love is grounded still more deeply in God's love, right? And if there were no spring at the bottom, if God were not love, then there would be neither a little lake nor a man's love. So he's calling this cosmic source God, but we can call it whatever, because in any case it exists, whatever, right? What Kierkegaard is describing is something that exists, which we have access to. He calls it God, but we can call it anything we want, right? It's the source, right? And so now, if this is true, that we really can connect from within to this cosmic source of love and receive the nourishment, the strength, the wisdom, everything, all the resources we need to be able to stand in the storm, to stand in the drought, and to continue to love even when we are not getting anything in return. If this is true, then the $1 million question is, how do I connect to it? Right? Because most of us, we're like, I don't feel it, right? I don't feel any source. I feel dead. I feel tired. I feel depleted. I feel demeaned. I feel exhausted. I feel resentful. In fact, I feel hateful, right? I don't feel any source of love within myself, especially in this situation, right? So we are, most of us have not ever accessed this, right? And we don't even think it's there since we have never accessed it. But so the $1 million question is, if Kierkegaard is right, if there is such a source, then how do I connect to it? And this I will tell you in the second half of the course. So we're going to have 5 minutes of suspense now. So 5 minutes until 4 p.m. and we'll take a break. You'll breathe, right? Absorb, right? Let this sink in. And then we're going to go and look at how we can connect to this source. Kierkegaard gives us some advice. It gives us a key to be able to access this cosmic source. And again, I want to emphasize this key is you don't have to be a Christian. You don't even have to believe in God to have this key. I'm about to give you every single one of this person in class, and you're going to get this key, right? Which you can turn, right? No matter who you are. All right, so let's take a break. I'm going to pause. What are we doing? Pause, stop. Let me pause the recording. Okay, so, all right, so now we get to the exciting second part of our Kierkegaard text. And this is where we're going to really receive the key. This is a key that is invaluable, because this is a key with which no matter what is happening outside of you, you can continue to bear fruit. You are going to be that tree planted by streams of water, which gives fruit in its season, in all seasons. You will be bearing fruit, right? I'm quoting one of the Psalms of David, right? So this is a key so that no matter where you are, what is happening around you, you can continue to be a being of light, to be a being of joy, to be a being of peace, to be a being of love, right? You can continue to radiate love no matter how dark your surroundings are. So this is a gift. This is an incredible gift that Kierkegaard has given us, right? The key to connecting to this cosmic source, right? So in this particular section, he's going to be commenting not on the Gospels. So he's not commenting the words of Jesus. He's commenting the words of a disciple of Jesus. This is the Paul, right? And this disciple is interesting because this is a disciple that used to persecute and kill and torture Christians, right? And then he had a vision. He became blinded by that vision, stayed in complete darkness for 3 days, and then, converted. And became one of the most prolific writers in the Christian community. So this is from his letter to the Church of Corinth. This is a city in Greece. There was a community there of Christians, and he's writing them a letter. And it's one of the most beautiful lyrical passages on love. So I'm going to read it to you really quick because our section is a quote from that passage. This is 1 Corinthians 13. This is the Apostle Paul, clearly a poet, right? So he writes this. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And then here's the passage that Kierkegaard is quoting from. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. And here's our passage. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And our section is love always hopes, right? So he's drawn this. So the whole second section, right, of works of love, I don't know if you noticed, part 2, is a commentary on this text that I just read you, right? It begins with love believes all, love builds up, love believes all things, love seeks not its own. And then our section, right, on hope, this is taken from this passage. He's just breaking it down and then kind of reflecting on each one of these sayings. So we're going to discover now how to connect to this cosmic source. And basically what Kierkegaard is saying, you don't connect intellectually. You connect through a way of acting, through a way of showing up in the relationship. Okay, so make sure you write this down, that the connection to this source is not something you connect to intellectually. It's not a truth. It's not something you connect to religiously, maybe through prayer or meditation, although you can, right? But in this context, he's saying, I want to connect to this source existentially, right? So it's through a way of showing up in the relationship. As you show up in the relationship, you're going to begin, your roots are going to go deeper and deeper, and you will gain access to this source. I don't know if you've noticed how trees grow. I love trees. I have friends who are trees, right? So I observe them a lot. As the tree grows up, guess what happens to the roots? Anybody know? As the branches go up, what happens to the roots? Let me see if any of you know this. Yes, my first question of the day. Rudolph, tell us.
Well, generally they go deeper, but there are trees where they go wider.
Okay, that's fine. The root system basically depends on the branch system as much as the branch system depends on the root system. So as your branches are growing, your root system simultaneously is going deeper. And that's what Kierkegaard is saying. As you take this, as you position yourself, as you show up in a certain way in the relationship, even if it feels fake at first because you have nothing, right? Your root system is going to start to go deeper and you will gain access. And so does anybody know what is this way of showing up? That there's one word that we're going to explore. What is this way of showing up that Kierkegaard is talking about? What's the main concept of this chapter? Rudolph, since your hand is up still, I'm going to ask you to answer that question.
Sorry, I was not paying attention, but Jesse's got it.
And Donaldson, go ahead.
Is it hope?
Yes, absolutely, right? Okay, so we're going to learn about hope. We're going to look at hope not as a feeling, but as a virtue. Okay, hope in this context is not a feeling. It's something you do. It's a work. It's a creation. It's in the Spanish, they say it very nicely. It's an obra. It's in French, it's œuvre. It's like a creative action, right? It's not just work, like going to work. So we're going to look at that, right? We're going to look at hope in a very different way than we're used to, right? It's not about feeling hopeful. It's not about, any type of feeling you could have or not have. You can actually exercise hope without feeling hopeful, right? So this way of being that Kierkegaard is saying, this way of showing up, which is hope, you don't even have to feel any hope to show up in that way, right? So we're going to look at that. So let's look at his definition of hope. This is key to, before we say anything, we have to look at that. So page 237, second paragraph. Let me make sure all of you are here. So second paragraph starts, this is what it means to hope. Hands in the screen if you're with me. Okay, 1, 2, thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so this I'm quoting, right? This is what it means to hope all things. Okay, so Kierkegaard is about to give us a clear definition. But in love, To hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men. So I'll stop right here. Hope is not a feeling, it's not an internal thing, it's not wishful thinking, it's relational. Okay, that's the first thing we learn. It's something you do that will connect you. It's a relational thing. It's not an inner subjective thing, right? So let's continue. That in relationship to them, hoping for them, and I'll come back to that, he continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Okay, we're going to decrypt this, right? We're going to parse this sentence. First of all, first thing we have to notice is hoping for them. Okay, so this is not, again, this is not wishful thinking. Oh, I wish things would get better. I wish he would do this more. I wish she would do this more for me, right? This is not that at all. You are hoping for them. Okay, so I want to ask you, first thing I want to ask you, right? What does it mean? What does it look like to hope for someone rather than hoping for yourself, right? Which is what we usually do. When we think of hope, and it's like, I'm hopeful, finally, you know, we'll get there, I'll feel better, he's going to love me more, she's going to do this more. No, this is hoping for them. So who can tell me, what does that look like? Any ideas on what it means to hope for someone rather than to wish for yourself? Donaldson, you happen to have your hand still up, so I'm going to call on you.
I'm furiously scribbling the quote. Can you ask again? Maybe I can provide an answer.
Or someone else also can help Donaldson, right? What does it mean to hope for someone rather than just wish for myself? Okay, let's get Suleimanov while Donaldson is scribbling.
So I guess to hope for someone is like, so you want them. So if you, so it's been a saying that if you love someone, you're gonna want to see them happy, you know. So maybe like that's like the idea where maybe that's what. Oh my God, I can't talk there. Maybe that's the idea where this is coming in, with the idea of like, not only if you love someone, they say like sometimes like you're gonna take them for yourselves, but in other views, you're gonna want them to be happy and you're gonna want them to succeed with or without you.
Oh, wow. Okay, excellent. That's it, right? Hoping for them. Let's imagine what it looks like. Suppose your partner is, I don't know, abusive. Let's imagine not dangerously abusive, like he's going to kill you, or she, right? But just abusive, it's difficult. They're impatient, they're verbally abusive and so forth. So how do we hope for them in this context when I'm the victim, right? What would it look like? So Kierkegaard would suggest, right, you hope for them, meaning you are hoping for their sake that they will change. Not, of course, for you, but primordially you're thinking, it would be so good for you to deal with these issues that are making you like this, right? It would be good for you to go to some therapy so you can understand why you are so violent, why you have so much anger. And it would be good for us if I could feel safer in this relationship so I could love you more, and this would be good for you, right? So in a way, you're thinking of their good. Hoping for them, you're thinking of everything they could become, of everything they could be, that they're not yet, right? So notice this, right? That hope is really a gaze you have on someone. It's a way of seeing the person. We're going to look at that in a second, right? But for now, let's just stop on this notion, right? I'm hoping for you means I am thinking of who you could become rather than what I could get. Okay, let me say that again. To hope is not about what I can get, what I can receive. It's about who that person could become, who they could, the amazing self that you sense is there, that you see is there. You are calling it forth through this gesture of hope, right? Through this practice of hope. So let's continue, right? Yes, same text, right? So hoping for them, we saw that. And then he goes further. He says continually. So not just once in a while, right? Always, without stopping, never giving up. You are keeping the possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. So let's analyze that. What does it mean, first of all, to be partial? What does it mean when a parent is partial to one child over another? Does anybody know, for example? What does it mean when a parent is partial? So he's like talking about partial, right? To be partial. So what does it mean when a parent, for example, is partial to a child over another? Donaldson, go ahead.
When a parent is partial, they're valuing one child more than another.
Exactly, right? Okay, so to be partial, make sure you jot this down so you can understand the quote. To be partial is to favor, is to lean towards, is to have more focus on one over the other, right? You're focusing more, you're more interested in, right? You're more into that, right, than the other. So when Kierkegaard is saying here, when you hope, you're keeping a possibility open. So you're opening up a possibility, which is what? With infinite partiality for the possibility of the good. So what does it mean to be partial to the possibility of the good of the other person? Does anybody know? Can you put the two together? What does it mean when I'm partial to the possibility of the good that lies in the other person? Who can interpret that? Let's go step by step. So Donaldson, enlighten us.
I think like what I get out of this is like that it's you're giving your partner the benefit of the doubt. You're believing that even though they're not kind of acting in like a appropriate way at this time, that they will or have the capacity to change. You're leaning towards that rather than thinking that they will never change and it will never work.
That's excellent, right? Absolutely. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? Or the, how do you put it? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, you are choosing to focus on who they could be. You're seeing who they are, right? That's quite obvious, right? But you're able to see more deeply. This is possible only with the gaze of love. Only love can see more deeply than what is right there, right? Only love, now to quote Rumi, can see the ocean where other people see the water jar. Do you remember that poem, right? So let me say that again, right? Only love can see beyond what everyone sees, the water jar, can see the ocean in the water jar, right? So hope is basically seeing everything the person could be, everything you know they could be, everything you sense they could be, all the potential that lies hidden in them that has not yet been developed, right? Yes, you're abusive now, but I can sense you're more than that, right? I can sense gentleness in you. I can sense a deep peace in you. Yes, you cheated on me, but I can sense more than that, right? I can sense your desire to be faithful. I can sense that you want to make this work, right? I can sense that you can be someone faithful, right? So you are in a way able to see more deeply, right? It always disturbs me when people say love is blind, right? I think we talked about this with Rumi. Love is not blind. Love is the most deeply perceptive vision that you will ever have on a human being, right? Love sees more deeply than others who do not love. Love is a vision. Love is a gaze, which is able to see beyond the appearances to the hidden potentialities of every human being. Rudolph, tell us.
The other day we were talking about psychological tendencies of certain people, and I think it was, we said someone may have a narcissistic tendency, and we labeled them and put them into this box, and we should be able to view over the rim of the box and see their potential to pull out. So when we're saying what you just explained, don't we turn our back to the psychiatry, the science, the medical science of psychiatry? And, where can a narcissist with a personality disorder change? When do they accept accountability? When should we, what kind of signs can we look for to see if the other person's perspective is changing, if they're willing to reflect on their negative behavior? Where does that come in?
So this is the qualm that philosophy has with psychology, right? Psychology labels, and then the person is stuck in that label. And I remember we did Buber on that, right? We know that you can never write that. One of the ways, the easiest way to lose the IU is to stick someone in a label, right? So this is where philosophy would critique, would be a critique of psychology, because psychology labels, and philosophy comes along and takes away the labels, right? Now, nevertheless, right? Let's look at the case of the narcissist. I want to talk 5 minutes on that because I have a lot of experience with narcissists. And I won't tell you who, but I'm going to protect this person's identity. But what I have noticed is that in a way, psychology is right that once a narcissist, always a narcissist. In the same way that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. In other words, the alcoholic can certainly overcome and become sober, but it's always there. He can always fall back, right? And so I have seen a narcissist really out of love make a powerful change, but it's always a little bit artificial. And not that it's not natural, but it's hard for them because the narcissism is always, you can always fall back into it. But I have seen extraordinary change in a narcissist that is very close to me, where that person is, you know, it was a huge battle for them, and it was incredibly difficult. But because they had love, they actually went through that process and this, you know, this almost this death and this resurrection. And I see that it's always there. They still struggle. It's not natural to them to not be a narcissist. But because of love, I believe they have transcended. And their partner now is actually, I just talked to them today, and they were telling me, you know, we are at peace and I feel safe for the first time in this relationship, right? So this is why I'm over this idea that a narcissist is always a narcissist. Like, yes, in a way, they will always struggle and it will always be an effort. But if they choose to change, or if they are, you know, somehow awakened, and it's hard to awaken a narcissist, but once they are awakened, they can change. And that's what Kierkegaard is saying. Even a narcissist, right, who clinically, I read all kinds of internet articles on narcissists. I have not seen a single article that says they can recover. Every single thing I read was saying, nah, it's final. That's who they always will be. Deal with it. You know? And I disagree. I have seen the powerful transformation of a narcissist. It's a struggle, yes. It's harder than most people, yes, but it's possible. So what Kierkegaard is saying is that even a narcissist, they can change, right? Anyone, if you see the possibility there, it's there, right? Love will show you things that are there that no one else can see. And so that's really the idea, that love always believes that the person can become a better version of themselves, right? There is never, a person is never locked into their behavior, into their past transgressions. The person can always, right, as Buber was saying, because the person is a you, they can always move beyond that, right? We are not objects. This pencil is condemned to be a pencil for the rest of its life. It will never change unless I break it, right? But by itself, it cannot change. A human being is not a pencil, right? Human beings have this potential to move, to grow, to change, to transform. And the gaze of hope is able to see the possibility of this transformation, right? Donaldson.
Would Buber's I relationship be an example of like a narcissistic kind of behavior?
Yeah. I think it's more I-it, because the I mean, the I, it's a mixture maybe of I and I-it, because the I is only thinking of their own feelings. Yes, narcissist is like that. In fact, I wonder sometimes if narcissists have feelings, but they do. And the I-it is everything revolves around him or her, right? So it's a mixture. It's the worst version, because the mixture of the two, right? And you know, I want to be really clear. All of us, to a certain degree, are on the spectrum of narcissism. There is not a single person in this classroom that's not a little bit narcissistic. There's some that are more than others, but we are all, this is human nature, right? We are all, in a way, this planet and everything revolving right around us. So let's not, right? I'm standing up for narcissists. I'm tired of the bashing for these poor narcissists who don't even know they have a problem. Yeah. So yes, so I think it's a mixture of I and I-it. Yes, in answer to your question. Okay, so let's read further, right? He goes a little further. He says some more things here on page 238. So let's go there, and I'm going to read quite a long paragraph, starting with the second paragraph. It is possible. Who is with me? Wave at me. Yes. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, so he says this, right? So he's now going to say there's two options when you're dealing with a crazy person. Let's imagine the narcissist in your life, okay? There's two options. You can despair. And then, of course, yes, this is true. He says, you're right. They are like this. But then you can hope. And what Kierkegaard is saying, when you hope, you are also right. You are also seeing truly, but you're seeing who the person could be. It is still a vision. It is not a lie. You're not fabulating. You're seeing a genuine potential. Do you follow? So when people tell you, oh, you're just, you're blind, they're not like that. You know, they're not like that. Yes, he's not, she's not like that. But what I can see clearly is who they can be. And this is as much of a fact as who they are right now. You are seeing something real. You're seeing the possibility, which is real, right? So both despair and hope see truly. They see genuinely. Despair sees who the person is right now. This is an accurate vision. And hope, however, is able to see who the person could be, which is also an accurate vision, right? So let's read what he says. It is possible, says despair. So this is, most of us are in that situation, by the way. We will see the worst case scenario, and this is what he says. It is possible that even the most sincere enthusiast becomes weary, gives up the struggle. It is possible that the deepest believer abandons faith. It is possible that the most burning love what does it say here? At some time cools off or is chilled. So he's basically saying, yes, it's true. Someone who loves you can stop loving you. Someone who believed in the relationship can stop believing. It's true, right? That even the most upright man comes to a detour in his life. It's true that your beloved can betray you in the most profound of ways. This is all true, right? And then he continues, yes, indeed. I'm skipping. Are you there? Right by the dash. Let me make sure everyone's with me. Yes, indeed. Are you there? Wave at me. Okay. So he continues, right? Yes, indeed. It is possible. So he agrees. Right? And then he says, and then we tell ourselves, therefore despair, give up hope, right? Henceforth, do not hope all things in any man or for any man. Most of us are stuck there, right? Because we feel that our despair is accurate, that it's a vision of the truth. We say, well, then why should I love? Why should I love someone who will betray me? And so we give up on love, right? And he says, yes, indeed, this certainly is possible. But then he says something very powerful. The opposite is also possible. The only thing is that this opposite cannot come about without a shift on your part, right? Let me say that again. You're in a shitty relationship, right? And you see very clearly it's never going to work. And you're right, right? And so the temptation to leave, yes, best advice you can give yourself, right? But then Kierkegaard is saying the opposite is also possible. This could turn out differently, but it will necessitate a profound revolution in the way you approach the relationship, or it will never happen. And so this is what he says. Therefore, because the opposite is possible, right? And you can shift the situation through your hope. We're going to talk about that, right? Therefore, never in unlovingness give up a person or give up hope for him, for it is possible. And now he's saying a long list of things that, yes, could also happen. The prodigal son can still be saved. The embittered enemy can become your friend. He who has sunk the deepest can become raised up again, right? It is possible that the love which has turned cold can burn again. Therefore, never give up any man, not even at the last moment. Do not despair. No, hope all things. So he's saying these things are just as true, but they cannot take place until you have made the shift from despair to hope. And so I want to talk about this shift now. I want to talk about the effect, the impact of hope. Right, so we've talked about hope now as a work of love. It's not a feeling, it's a work, it's a virtue, it's a choice, it's an attitude, it's a posture, it's something that you offer the other, you offer them this gaze, right, of hope. But now I want to talk for the rest of the time together, I want to talk about the impact of hope. I want to talk about hope as a transformative force. So I want to look at that because most of us are like, okay, well, that's nice. I'm going to hope. And then what? Right. Well, what Kierkegaard is saying, and by the way, there are connections with, since we had Martin Luther King Day a few days ago, right? Which I really strongly suggest you read his powerful book, since we're in a love class, The Strength to Love, right? By MLK. In this book, actually, Martin Luther King talks about love as a force, right? So in one of the last chapters of the book. It's a brilliant book, by the way. It's a masterpiece of literature, of philosophy. He's just, I read it, I was blown away. So he talks about love as a force. Love is not a feeling for Martin Luther King. Love is a political force. And we know that he harnessed that power in the way that he did his activism, right? He was always emphasizing nonviolent activism which stems from a place of love. Why? Not because he was a Christian or he was trying to be like Jesus. No, he was doing this because he knew the power of love. He knew that only love can transform, only love can build, only love can shift things, right? So we have the same idea here with Kierkegaard, that hope is not just a feeling. It's not just wishful thinking. It has an impact. And I'm going to look at two ways that it has an impact. First of all, psychologically, and second of all, metaphysically, so existentially, right? So I'm going to look at these two things. Let me put them in the chat. So first, we're going to look at the psychological impact of hope. And then we're going to look at the existential or metaphysical impact of hope, right? So these are two approaches, two ways of describing the impact of hope. So I'll begin the first one, the psychological, with a story. So back in the day, before my career in philosophy, I was an elementary school teacher. Those were the worst years of my life. I can't believe I survived. And I was teaching 8th grade, which is really, these are not kids, these are mutants. Like they are mutating into some kind. I don't know if any of you have ever taught, the beginning of teenager. It's the worst. Anyways, I was dealing with these 8th graders, and I was teaching English as a second language. Worst time of my life. I would see them in the day, and then I would dream about them at night. It was just, I could never get rid of them. So there was one kid in the class who was, he was a little older, he was a little smarter, and he just created a circus. He would just ruin everything for me. He would just, he was the ringleader, right? And I had noticed that he actually had some ease in English. He was a little older. And so what I did, I had a moment of inspiration, which I rarely had during those years. And I called him to my office and I said, and this is what I told him. I said, listen, you're the smartest kid in the class. You're way advanced than the others in English, right? I want you to become my assistant. Right? And I said, in the class, I won't call on you anymore. I said, I'm not going to treat you like student, because your level is higher, you don't need to be called on. But I'm gonna ask if you can help your classmates, just help them with their homework, with whatever is going on. Because I feel like, you're more mature than them, and you're the smartest kid in the class. Mind you, this was the ringleader. He was just destroying my class, had no respect, nothing. Anyways, next day in class, he's quiet. He's sitting, and then he's raising his hand. I mean, the kid, complete transformation, right? He started helping the kids, just because I said a few words, right? Now, what do you think happened? What? Never gave me another problem. I mean, he would tell the other kids to shut up, right? When they were acting up. So can anyone tell me what did I do? What was the thing? What was the stroke of genius that rarely happened to me during those years? What was the stroke of genius that shifted? What did I do to shift this kid's behavior? Tell me, what was my technique? Let's see if you got anything I've been saying. Donaldson, go ahead.
You made him feel good. You told him that, he was the best in the class. You flattered him. And
yes.
I guess what you're looking for me to say, I think, is that you showed him some love.
Yes, I hoped, right? I basically saw, right? Or I described to him what I saw, which was his best version, right? I didn't bring him to my office to tell him, look, you need to stop, messing up my class. You're really a terrible person. You're disrespectful. You're never going to make it. You better stop or else. No, I didn't say any of that, right? I went straight to the depth, and I went and I told them, this is who you truly are, right? And I'm going to expect that from you. You are the most intelligent kid of the class. And so, of course, I saw all the disrespect. I mean, this kid was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to slash your tires. And I'm like, go ahead. My car is a dump anyways. It doesn't matter. Right? He was like threatening my car. And I was like, but I went, right. I was able to detect who he truly was. That's hope. And when you begin to see the potential of the other human being you're living with, you are in a way calling it forth. You are manifesting it, right? We talk a lot about manifesting and magnetizing in our culture, right? Well, this is the key, right? You can manifest the goodness of a human being simply by seeing it and identifying it. You can, you don't even, sometimes you don't even have to speak, just see it and believe it's there. And the other person begins to blossom in the direction of the light that you are bestowing on his being, right? When you gaze in a person in hope, it is the same as sunlight to a plant, right? That plant will turn to that sunlight and begin to blossom, right? And so in many ways, right, if you can just seeing the potential in the other person and sometimes telling them what you see is can begin a process where the person somehow, you know, just awakens to that and begins to blossom in that direction, right? So psychologically, hope is extremely powerful. Let me tell you another funny story. This is actually a true story. I hope I say it right. It was an experiment that people did. And so they went to a classroom in a very shitty elementary school. And they went and they said, okay, you guys are all going to take a stand. This is a true story. You're all going to take a standardized test, and then we'll pick the top 5. And these people we're going to support and make sure they have a, you know, world-class education. We're going to make sure they make it to the best high school and so forth. Okay, great. All the kids take the test. The 5 best ones get selected. They go, you know, to the elite high schools. All their way is paid because they're the smartest kids, and they become incredibly successful. You know, one of them neuroscience, the other one lawyer. I mean, they're, you know, 10 years later. So the study, nobody said that it was a 10-year study, right? So 10 years later, these people are all brought into the researcher's office, right? And a revelation is made to them. Does anybody know? Can anybody guess what they told these 5 now very successful people? Rudolph.
Just hold it back because I know the story.
Okay, you want to say it?
Well, those were the 5 worst students.
Yes, they were the 5 worst students. They were the bottom, the dregs. And they were told, however, that they were smart, intelligent, and supported, and they became incredibly high achievers, right? So again, right, this time it's a study, it's not just my own experience. Hope has a tremendous psychological impact, right? You can transform a person's life. You can turn them around just by the way you see them. I mean, they did not, I mean, they gave them a good education, but that's it. They primordially, they saw, or they, you know, lied. But surely it was there, right? You can never go wrong when you see the good in another person. It's always there. You can quote me on that. Let me say it again, right? You are never wrong. You are never deluding yourself when you see the good in another human being, because it's always there. There is always somewhere deep beneath the rubble. The good is always there. So you can never go wrong when you gaze in at someone like this. Okay, so that's the psychological impact, right? So you can see that hope actually has an effect. It has an impact, a transformative impact. But I want to go now into the metaphysical aspects, which Kierkegaard also talks about, which brings us back to our original dilemma, which is how to connect to the cosmic source of love, right? Now, this is what Kierkegaard is describing. And this is something, again, that you cannot go and take put that under the microscope or discover it on a mountain. This is something that you can only know if you experience it. A lot of the truths in existentialist philosophy, a lot of what these people are talking about cannot be known intellectually. It can only be known experientially. So what I'm about to say, you can only know if you've experienced it. In other words, if you've hoped and seen the effect on you, right? So basically what Kierkegaard is going to say is that as you hope, as you practice this hope, and it's a discipline, I'm going to every day see the good in this person. I'm going to make a gratitude list. I'm going to make a list of all the things I admire about. I mean, it's very artificial, right? You might have no hope in your heart, but you're going through this gratitude, ritual. You're trying to see the good. You're speaking it and feeling fake, but you're speaking it nevertheless, right? There's an element of, it's a little artificial at the beginning when you're going, when you're heartbroken and you're depleted and you're angry. It's hard to go around saying, I see what you could be, I see everything we could be. It's not natural. You just want to punch them in the face. That's what you want to do. So it's a little artificial, but as you do this practice, what Kierkegaard is saying, as you bear fruit, your roots will begin to tap deeper. And at one point, they will collide and connect with the cosmic source. And at that point, you will become filled from that dimension. As you are pouring, you will become full. That's the story of the Samaritan woman. Give me a drink, pour yourself out, and as you pour, you are filled. It's the opposite as the laws of the material universe, right? The material laws of the universe say, the more you pour, the more empty. But the spiritual laws of the universe say, the more you pour, the fuller you become. And so what will happen actually, as you practice this love, you will become more loving. And this more loving is actually going to manifest itself in a feeling of fullness, right? And this is, again, it sounds counterintuitive, it sounds magical, right? And it is magical, right? But anybody who's done this can relate, I think, who's loved when it was hard, and you have found that by loving, you became more loving. As a person, you became the embodiment of love. You didn't need it anymore because you were so full of it from giving it away so much, right? So there is a deep state of love and peace and joy that begins to develop in us as we practice this hope, right? And that's what he says here on page 233 when he says, let's look at that quote. 233. Okay, go to the second section. In the middle of that second section, hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. Let me see if you all see it and wave at me when you're there. So second section, the middle, hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. Okay, I need one more person who's gotten it. Okay, that the answer, that's great. Okay, so so let's stop on that. Right, hoping, he says, is composed of the eternal and the temporal. What is he saying? Basically, he's saying this. Hope is that which connects, which makes the connection, which opens the door between the temporal, which is things like they are now, and the eternal, which is how things could be. Okay, let me say that again. So let's talk about what is temporal, what is eternal, right? In Kierkegaard's language. Temporal is how things are now, how it is, the relationship, bad, temporal. It's now, in time, right? Eternal for Kierkegaard is not some kind of, afterlife. It's not God. It's not, heaven. Eternal is access now. The dimension of the eternal is the dimension of this cosmic source of love, or God, right? So for Kierkegaard, and this is fascinating about existentialism, you can access the eternal in the here and the now through daily, simple actions of love, right? As you hope on a daily basis, you can begin to tap into the dimension of the eternal. You don't have to die to get there. You can get there now. You can begin to tap into the dimension of the cosmic source of love, right? Which is another name for the eternal, right? That's what he means by the eternal, okay? He means the God dimension. He means the cosmic source of love. So basically we have access to it here and now. We don't need to wait till we die or till we resurrect or till Jesus comes back or whatever, or Judgment Day, right? Or the apocalypse. We can tap into heaven now. And we can tap into all of the resources of heaven and receive them now. The more you love, the more this dimension begins to flow into you, through you, back into the world. I heard this interesting quote, I forgot where, but I really liked it. It says, God loves emptiness. In other words, wherever there is emptiness, God comes and fills us up, right? When you're pouring forth your hope, you're in a way becoming empty. And as you're becoming empty, the source is rising up inside of you, right? It's like, you know, water goes where there's empty space, right? If there's no empty space, the water stays there. As long as your being is full of resentment, is full of anxiety, is full of, you know, I'm unhappy, right? The water cannot flow in. The source of love has no access, but the moment you empty yourself in the selfless act of hoping, you are creating an opening through which that water can begin to flow. Are you following the water metaphor? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Put your hand if you're with me. Yes. Okay. So that's the idea, right? Water cannot flow when there's fullness. If you're full of yourself, meaning you're only thinking of taking and your happiness and how miserable you are and you want to leave and you hate this, right? No room. The moment you empty yourself in the selfless act of hope, in the powerful act of hope, which is an emptying over and over again, the water now will begin to rise inside of you, right? The cosmic source of love will begin to have access to your body and through your body into your situation. Right? That's what Kierkegaard means when hoping, right? When he says hoping is at the junction of the eternal and the temporal, right? Okay, so that's, so any questions so far before we go to the last point, which is the notion of the title, Love is Never Put to Shame. Any questions or concerns? Now we can take a small Q&A break just to make sure everybody got this, or if there's any people who have some resistance to what Kierkegaard is saying, or you want to clarify, or you don't get it, or you don't think it works, right? This is the moment to speak up so we can clarify before we go to the last section. Anybody have anything to, or comment, to agree or disagree, doesn't matter. No, all clear? Particularly docile class. Okay, all right, so let's go to the last point now. This is a crazy one. You thought it was crazy up until now. Now we're going into pure craziness. Kierkegaard, in the title of this section, right, says love hopes all things and yet is never put to shame. This is page 231, right? This is the title. Love hopes all things. So we've been talking about love hopes all things, transformative, impact of hope, but what does it mean is never put to shame? So let me give you the following scenario. Imagine you've been with a lover and you've done all these things, right? You've dug deep, you've hoped, you've been filled, right, with this amazing cosmic source has, you know, risen up into you. You've done everything, you've followed to the letter, right, what Kierkegaard is talking about, and yet your beloved left you. And now how do you feel? Give me some words. How you feel now after all this work you put into the relationship, all this time you put into the relationship, all this love you poured into the relationship, and then they leave. How you feel? Give me some. You can put it in the chat if you don't want to talk. I get it. How do you feel usually? I want to hear several feelings. I want to have at least 3 or 4 feelings in the chat or out loud. What's your reaction? You've done everything. Okay, so Donaldson, betrayed. Let's see. Upset and petty, says Debbie. Souvenance, you gave him hope. Empty souvenance. Okay, see, pretty bad, right? Rudolph, you want to add to the general
deception, disappointment,
yeah.
Anger, just complete emptiness.
Yeah, absolutely. You feel even more depleted than before, right? Fadakov, tell us.
Disappointed, and I would probably also say disenchanted.
Yeah, very good. Okay, very honest class, right? Absolutely. So I agree, right? The first feeling we have, right, is betrayal, emptiness, feeling like we wasted our time, feeling betrayed, feeling like, you know, demeaned, right? Like, you know, dirt, right? And so forth. So what does Kierkegaard mean when he says, when you hope like this, you will never be put to shame? In other words, you will not feel those emotions. You will not feel demeaned. You will not feel, you know, empty. You will not feel betrayed. You will feel something else. So explain to me, can anyone figure out this riddle that when you love in that way that Kierkegaard just described, you always come out victorious, never defeated. That's what he's saying. You always come out victorious and never defeated. You do not feel what you guys were talking about. So let's see if any of you can guess, and then I will try to explain based on what you guys say. How is that possible? Right? So think about it a little bit. It's not easy, because that's the first reaction, to someone leaving us after we've poured so much into them. But what Kierkegaard is saying, no, at the end of this relationship, you're the victorious one, right? What do you mean I'm victorious? I lost the person, right? How can we be victorious even though there's a breakup? What's going on? No shame, he says, will not be put to shame, meaning you will not be embarrassed. You will have done the right thing. Everyone will praise you. What does that mean? Rudolf, help us out.
Well, we're going into the selfless act of what was described Christian love by him. And it's really relieving us from feeling guilty, because we have given just about everything one can give. So there is no more responsibility from us to go any further.
That's a good one. I like that one. You can tell yourself, I gave all I got. I did my best. At least you don't have to feel guilty that you didn't do this or didn't do that, because you can say, I gave it my best shot. Okay, so yes, that's good. Any other ways of seeing the victory here in the defeat? The victory that hides in the defeat. So yes, definitely that helps a lot. You gave it your best shot. You can tell yourself, I really did it. I really gave it my all. And I don't have now to feel bad that I didn't do enough. Rudolf, is that still you?
Well, there's also, in addition to that, there's a new beginning. There is room now to go on.
Okay, very good. And how do you go on? Like, describe to us the state of mind, because it's very hard to go on when you've been betrayed, right? So where do you see this new beginning?
But it creates room for us to be open now to learn about someone else, or to, it works in certain circumstances, I should say. If it is a relationship between two partners, that kind of love, I believe, creates, after something is over, creates room for someone to see a new beginning, and now not make the same mistake of picking that same personality, perhaps. If it comes to the kind of love we extend to friends and family, it's on a different level, has a different vibe. When it comes to family, there is no end to it. It's family. So there is no out. They will always be your mothers, whether they pass or not. There will always be your children. There will always be your uncles. There will always be some sort of a relative, and you're caught in that circle of family. It's a different animal there. But if it comes to partnership, I believe it gives you wings. It gives you, if you have been that disappointed, if you gave it all you got, then you need to come to the realization that that was not for you. It was just not meant to be.
Okay, excellent. Yes, you can say, listen, it wasn't me. I did my part, But I'll add something to what you're saying, and then I'll get to you, Souvenos. If you've really loved, right, you continue to love. I think we mentioned that even after the breakup, you don't become resentful, right? And because you don't become resentful, it's easier for you to move to the next relationship because you're still open, right? So the way that we're talking about hoping, right? Even though it didn't work out, you're still hoping for them, right? That, well, probably, and there's someone better for them. You're still in a way pouring out love for them. And because you are able to not get into a place of resentment, because you are cultivating love even after the breakup, you're cultivating forgiveness, love, which we talked about, right? Your heart remains open, and it is much easier for you to get into a new relationship without baggage, right? So in that sense, I totally agree with you. Yes. Souvenos, did you want to add a few words?
I was just gonna say that I was still able to experience this type of love. So that's like, I guess, some sort of victory, but I kind of don't believe it anymore.
So wait, say that again. I'm sorry, it was hard to hear. Can you say one more time?
I was just gonna say that it's okay. I don't really agree with my answer anymore.
So what
It's
do
not
you
good.
what do you agree with? What would you say instead?
I don't know. I'm still learning.
Okay, someone else is suspended.
I'm
Yeah,
still like thinking about everything we learned today in class, if I agree with it or not.
excellent. No, that's good. That means you're really struggling with the material. This is not easy, right? It's easy to understand, but to really let it sink in and realize, whoa, this is high level risk that we're talking about, right? This is the type of Rumi poetry we were talking about, right? This is not the average, right, approach. So let me add and try to just try to bring together what Kierkegaard means by the fact that your love can never be put to shame. In other words, you never lose. Let me put it this way. When you love in that way, when your love has been so profound that you have become more loving, right? When you love in a way that has not only, maybe has not transformed them, but transformed you, right? Then you get to the point where you've lost the lover, but you found love, right? Let me say that again, right? When you love in that way, yes, there's a possibility of transforming the other, right? When you love in this hopeful way, right? You are, of course, creating the possibility, conditions of possibility of change. But at the same time, you are becoming deeply transformed. Your heart is enlarging. You are developing a capacity for love you did not have before, right? You will never love in the same way again, right? Now that you come out of this relationship, you are a much better lover than when you first came into the relationship. You have a much wider capacity for love. And so what Kierkegaard is saying is that, yes, you lost the lover, but you found love, right? You became somebody that you were not before. You became a loving person that you never thought you could be like that, right? I mean, you will experience this. That I never thought I could love like that. It's crazy. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I never thought I could love like that. And this enlarged capacity for love, you now are bringing into the next relationship. You are now actually, this is why, I don't like these sayings that, when someone, I don't know, this idea that if you've been in a relationship, you're not as good for the next relationship. No, you're better, right? If you love in that way, right? So that's, I think, what he's saying, that you have become so, your love has become so deep and so enlarged, your heart, right? You have connected to the cosmic source of love. You have tasted what it's like to become a loving person. Nothing has been taken away from you. On the contrary, you have gained. Right? I think Epictetus says this. Epictetus is a Stoic philosopher. He said this beautifully in one of his works. He says, listen, if what you gained, suppose you say you lost something, but it turns out you gained out of this loss more than what you lost. Okay, it's a little convoluted. Let me say it again, right? When you lose something, if what you gained through this loss is more than what you lost, then don't say you lost anything. Are you following? Let me put it in the chat. When you lose, and I'll explain. When you lose something and it turns out you gained more than you lost, more than what you lost, don't say you lost anything. Right? In other words, there are moments where, yes, I lost the lover, right? I lost the person, but I found myself. I found who I was. I became the highest version of myself. I became love. I developed the ability, the capacity to love. And I know I've said this before, I think, but I was talking to, again, I mentioned this example again about my friend who came to my house, right? She had just broken up and she was feeling like you guys were saying, depleted, betrayed, demeaned, right? And I said, listen, this man and all his imperfections made you into the amazing woman that you showed yourself to be in that relationship, because she really tried. She really gave of herself. She really poured herself out in the relationship, and she became a different woman from what I knew when I knew her before, right? She came from a bud to a full blossomed rose, right? I said, this man in his imperfections still brought out the woman in you. and now you are that woman, right? And therefore you have gained that. So what if he left? The loser here is not you, it's him, right? This is the person who loses, is the one who leaves you, right? In that sense. So that's what Kierkegaard is saying, right? Yes, you lost the person, but you discovered the path to the cosmic source of love. You became a fully blossomed woman or a fully blossomed man, right? Through this ordeal, through this experience, you have become a better version of yourself, if you loved in that way, right? Does that make sense? Maybe Souvenance is a little clearer. Souvenance, how are you feeling now?
Okay, that's good.
Okay, are you following? Put your hand if you got what I was saying, because it's a little, it's tricky, right? Okay, good. All right, so 3 minutes left. Great. Any final questions before we conclude on this? Kierkegaard is the climax of the class, in my view. It's really, it just blew me away when I read this stuff. I was like, wow, this is next level. Never seen anything like this. Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about next week. So, okay, so this week you have a test, right? Kierkegaard, Buber, same thing. You do the 2 pages, single spaced with quotes, blah, blah, blah. You do the essay, right? Remember, it's a crisis. You tell me the problem, and then you try to resolve the problem with some of the material that we did this week. And then next week we finish with, finally, right, we're going to talk about lovemaking. So it'll be interesting to end on that note. And so next week you read, of course, you listen to the audio on Kierkegaard, An Introduction to Feminism. And then you will read the text, do the reading assignment, and then we'll conclude next week with a lecture on Kierkegaard. Any final questions? Nope. Okay, let me stop the recording.
Professor, I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
When's the project due?
Okay, good question. Let me stop the recording and then I'll answer.